So when you're starting your buying process and the journey to purchasing your first home, you may notice that different agents have got different sale types. There's the private sale or an auction. And so you might be wondering how these different sale methods affect your finance. Let me break them down for you. So if we start with a private sale, and this is a transaction that's negotiated with yourself and the real estate agent on behalf of the vendor. You have the option of putting in as many or as little conditions as you'd like. And the conditions may be that you are subject to finance, subject to a building or pest inspection, or anything else that you deem you may need to protect yourself against. So the pros for this type of purchase transaction is that you have a little bit more protection as a buyer. You can name some conditions that are going to protect you in the event of not being able to meet the purchase. If your finance can't get through, then you can get out of the contract. If there are major structural defects on the property, you can get out of the contract. And the cons to this type of transaction is that the process isn't as transparent. In the event of a private sale, you are likely to come up against multiple other competitors. So you may not know how much to offer or how much your competitors are offering, meaning that you could potentially pay a lot more than the next best offer. The second method that is quite common is an auction. And this is usually an open forum either at the property or at the real estate agent's office. And in front of everyone, you will be bidding on how much you want the property to go for. The auctioneer will hold the auction. They will go up larger increments initially and then whittle their way down. Now, one of the benefits of an auction is that this process is quite transparent. You can see exactly what your competitors are offering, and you, via one bid at a time, will increase your offer to beat them. There will be a little bit of backwards and forwards, and the auction can last up to a half an hour, sometimes even more, but at least you know what your competitors are offering and when they pull out of the transaction. One of the cons, however, is that the auction is an unconditional contract, meaning you do not have the protection of putting in subject to finance or subject to a building or pest inspection. So this is where it's really important to have your finances in order, and you would want to make sure that you would receive a pre-approval and a fully assessed pre-approval at that prior to making an offer at auction. So now it's probably a good time to talk about the pre-approvals and how they relate to your auction process or even the private sale. And ultimately, it's best practice to try and get a pre-approval before putting in any offers on a property. So the bank having a look at your financial situation, checking your income, checking your expenses, running a credit report, and giving you the tick of approval is so important to understanding what you can purchase for and how much your limit is. So there's a couple of different types of pre-approvals that you must be aware of, and one of them is one that is fully assessed. It's actually passed a credit assessor's desk. They have physically looked at your payslips, your income verification, your savings, your transactions, all of your monthly expenses. They've done a credit report check and then given it a human final check. Someone is actually having a look at it and giving you a pre-approval. The other one is a system-generated pre-approval and is reliant heavily on the data that's input and is generally not worth the paper it's written on. There's often a situation where they haven't checked your income, they haven't checked your credit report, they haven't checked your living expenses. So the banks do this to save on resources, but in terms of protection, it doesn't give you the best outcome. Whenever anyone assesses your pre-approval and once you've received it, you're looking for two conditions and two conditions only. The bank will need to see a contract of sale once you've purchased a property, and then they're going to go out and do a valuation on the property to make sure that you've paid a fair and market value and the security that they're taking is acceptable. So what are the benefits of having a pre-approval? Well, if you're looking at purchasing at auction, it gives you the confidence and peace of mind knowing that the bank have approved you up to a particular dollar amount. And this is really important too, because if you go over it, you may or may not be approved. So to have that limit in place by the bank will give you the confidence of knowing what you can bid up to. In the event of a private sale, it potentially means that your process, once you successfully negotiate the property, is going to be a little bit faster to get to a formal approval because you've already started taking steps down the track. What happens is once you purchase, and this is in the case of a auction process or a private sale, is that you supply your broker with the contract of sale. The broker then organises a valuation, and once they've got the valuation with the contract, they send that off to the bank and look to proceed to a formal approval. So you may be wondering what happens if the valuation comes back and it's not worth what you're paid for it. So there's a couple of different options, but ultimately in all of my years of broking, I've only seen this come back twice. We simply then reached out to another lender who instructed a different valuer, and we provided them again with the contract of sale, and lo and behold, it came back at the purchase price. So we switched lenders and proceeded to go to a formal approval with the new lender, who was able to give us a satisfactory valuation. And so in the event of an auction, you're unlikely to get a valuation that comes in short, because going to auction is deemed an open forum and the purchase price is deemed to be market value. So it would be highly unlikely that a valuer would say that you've paid overs because there was someone else that was willing to pay slightly less than you. So there you have it, a couple of different points between an auction process and a private sale. But from the finance side of things, ultimately there's no real difference. The best option is to get yourself a pre-approval to make sure that you know what your limit is and how much the banks are prepared to lend you. And then once you're successful, it's a matter of forwarding the contract over to the broker to work towards getting you the formal approval and ready to settle on your property.